is up, guys? So, man, all around, I wanted to take a break from like the sovereigns. Um, just like real briefly. I think probably later tonight there's another Kirk Pendergrass and a fucking Arlena Willis, Shara Michelle live. And just everything going on in the world as general. Politics, election, all that stuff. I thought this would be a nice break all around. Because last night I was randomly looking into some court documents on the underground LSD Palace, which is known to be one of the largest busts like in the history of the country as far as LSD goes. And looking through these court documents, I knew a pretty good chunk about this case, but man, it got so much darker than I knew, like especially after the bust and with some of the key players that were involved, specifically a Gordon Todd Skinner. So I thought this would be a fun one to look at. Let's see. So here's the thing. This actually got some news attention, but I don't think it got anywhere near the amount of attention that it should have actually got. And thanks to the help of Vice, which I generally like Vice, but a lot of times they can fuck stuff up sometimes. And I think in this situation they kind of fucked it up. And that was when they went, Harrison, who's known for doing his coverage on different sort of drugs and whatnot. He normally does a pretty good job. He went and did an interview with Crystal Cole, who is a part of this story. She's a very young stripper at the time that started dating Todd. But Todd was the partner of William Leonard Pickard, who William Leonard Pickard was really the brains behind it. He was the chemist behind it, who ended up getting sentenced to 2 life sentences for his role in this bust. But I don't know. I feel like Vice gave Crystal kind of a bigger role. And another reason why I'm going to do this is William was actually let out early in July of this year. And I want to see if I can get him on a live. I already sent out an email. And then Crystal Cole that I was just talking about is actually, I have her as a friend on my Facebook account. So I want to see if I can get some of them on. Not to mention, growing up in Wichita, Kansas, this is something that did affect our lives. Me and my friends, when we were young, teenage shitheads, we were using acid that was coming from this place. And I'm not exactly someone that condones drug use for everybody. I don't think it's for everybody. But psychedelics at some point, they have been shown to do some good things. And this story also kind of touches on this problem of the war on drugs and this filling the prison with victimless crimes and sometimes making the punishment way too harsh than what it's supposed to be. So I found these court documents last night, though, and just to give you like more of a clarity of what was actually going on here. This is actually from, I believe this is the DEA site. Now, these are old from the DEA site, and I think over the years, whenever they updated their servers and whatnot, I don't think they did that great of a job, so there's like pictures missing and shit, but I promise you this is straight from the DEA site. So if it looks a little sketchy, that's just, I don't know. My guess is that they didn't switch over the website all that great whenever they fucking switched it over. Why, thank you. The set's taken a minute to get up to this point. So here's the actual rundown of what went on. Special Agent in Charge Stephen Delgado, Drug Enforcement Administration, San Francisco Field Division, and United States Attorney Eric Melgren, District of Kansas, announced today that Bay Area residents William Leonard Pickard, Mill Valley, California, 57, Clyde Apperson, 47, Sunnyvale, California, were found guilty today following an 11-week jury trial of one count of conspiracy to manufacture and distribute more than 10 grams of LSD from August 1999 through November 2000, and one count of possession with the intent to distribute more than 10 grams of LSD, which it was definitely more than 10 grams. I think the actual amount was somewhere around 92 kilos or some shit. Melgren stated that according to court testimony, this was the largest LSD lab seizure ever made by the Drug Enforcement Administration. DEA agents seized approximately 41.3 kilograms, 90.86 pounds of LSD, approximately 23.6 kilograms, 51.92 pounds of ISO LSD, and a byproduct from the manufacture of LSD. Further trial evidence established that the history of DEA, there have only been 4 seizures of complete LSD labs, and 3 of these seizures involved Pickard and Apperson during a lab in Mountain View, California in 1998, a lab in Oregon in 1996, and this lab in Wamego, Kansas. So, yes, kilos of LSD, very lit. So there actually is, in all reality, if you ever experimented with LSD between, I think they started in like 95, 96 was when it started to grow, through I think 2000, 2001, chances are this is where you got it. This is where it came from. It was going all across the country, and they actually believed that they were about to go international when this raid actually happened. According to court testimony on October 31st, 2000, DEA agents conducted a search of a silo near Wamego, Kansas, and found an LSD lab packed in storage boxes. On November 6, 2000, Pickard and Apperson were moving the illegal lab when they were stopped by the Kansas Highway Patrol. Sorry, I have like a rack. I need to figure out this monitor a little better. I'm just like blocking the perfect little corner of this monitor. Apperson was arrested driving the rental truck containing the lab. Pickard, who was driving a Buick LeSabre, fled on foot and was arrested the next day at a farm outside Wamego. And I guess actually at one point it said that Pickard got naked and was laying under cold leaves to avoid any sort of infrared detection and shit like that until he was picked up that next day. 14 canisters of a chemical required to produce LSD, valued at over $1 million, were found at the missile silo, according to court testimony. Pickard and Apperson previously manufactured LSD in Santa Fe, New Mexico, where every 5 weeks the lab produced about 2.2 pounds of LSD, approximately 10 million doses that cost less than 1 cent a dose to produce and would sell for as much as $10 a dose. According to court testimony, the LSD was shipped to California and later to Europe for distribution. So I guess according to this, actually, I missed that it already had gone to an international level. Pickard and Apperson each face a minimum of 10 years and a maximum of life in federal prison without parole. Sentencing is scheduled for August 8th, 2003 at 9 a.m. in Kansas. Pickard remains in federal custody, and Apperson was remanded to federal custody. And so we get like the basic drift. I think quite possibly they say the actual, maybe they don't in here. I forget Apperson's actual sentencing, but Pickard, though, he was sentenced to 2 life sentences for his role in this. So yeah, 4.4 pounds a month. So it was a lot. But if you'll notice, there was only 2 names charged there, and the 2 names that aren't there is Crystal Cole, and then also Gordon Todd Skinner, which the reason behind that is that Gordon Todd Skinner actually started to find out that there was about to be an impeding bust. And what he did was he actually contacted the DEA with his attorney, and he ratted on everybody, like everybody. And unfortunately, Leonard took the brunt of this. And so he got charged with 2 life sentences. So legally, he took the blunt. Media-wise, Crystal Cole got that Vice interview, and she started this YouTube channel, Neuro Soup, where she has 131,000 subscribers. Until before the COVID situation, she also had a painting store in one of our malls in Town West Square. But looking at her Facebook last night, I see that she shut that down during COVID. So the thing is, though, and we'll get to this because, man, Todd's a really, really screwed up guy. And this story does get really dark. But this is from his testimony, actually against Leonard, and this is what got him immunity for the actual LSD Palace, and then for also a murder, which then he went on just a couple years later to kidnap an 18-year-old, and for 6 days duct taped him and injected him with various drugs while punching, kicking, and at one point even quote-unquote popping the man's penis in a hotel room in Oklahoma. So it ended up that Todd here actually ended up getting life in prison as well for the kidnapping because everything that went on was that bad. And then Crystal Cole still managed to get out of the situation. So again, my Facebook account's out of jail in like 4 days, so I'm going to reach out to Crystal, and I'm also I already sent out an email to Leonard, who was released early this year. Gordon Todd Skinner, on the other hand, I don't see him getting out any time in the near future. So I don't know. I may try and reach out to him, even in jail. Obviously, I'm a Soros shill. So this transcript, though, from court definitely, it kind of explains the operation a little bit more. And again, this is also, the guy was sentenced to 2 lifetimes in prison for this. And that goes back to that problem like earlier, this failed drug war where we have victimless crimes and we have people completely filling our jails with incredibly harsh sentences when at the end of the day, you know, producing LSD, there's really not it's a victimless crime. So this is how this went down, though. Mr. Skinner, yesterday you talked about kilo quantities of LSD coming out of the lab, going to the Denver area where it was picked up by Petaluma Owl. I would like to start there, in which I do like their little seller guy's name, the Petaluma Owl. Let me see, where does he start answering? Because it is a transcript and like the case in general. Okay, and what is a dosage unit of LSD? It varies between 50 micrograms and 100 micrograms. Can you move so you don't have to lean forward, move the microphone where you are comfortable with it so you can sit back and relax. So it varies between how much? I'm sorry. 50 micrograms and 100 micrograms. And how is it administered based upon your knowledge? It goes to often liquid vials, and it used to go to blotter paper, and there's probably still people that put it in the form of blotter paper. To go back and answer the question that you asked me before, 1 kilogram of LSD at 100 microgram dose would be approximately 10 million doses. And I could go through the explanation of how I got to that. So, what was it? I think it was, I am a Republican. I'm a hardcore Republican. What was the actual bus number again? Yeah, so 41.3 kilograms. And according to Todd here, in 1 kilogram, there is 10 million doses of LSD. So that gives you an idea of exactly how large this lab was. So, okay, a gram would be, first of all, LSD is effective at 100 micrograms. And a gram has 1 million micrograms. And so you would go 1 million micrograms times 1,000 grams, that represents a kilogram, which is a billion. Then you divide that by 100 micrograms, take 2 zeros off of the billion, and that's 10 million doses. But I can give you a physical description. This is a bottle of aspirin. I brought this not for example, but because I'm taking it, because of a slight cold. This weighs approximately a gram, and if it was ground up and everything, this would be about 10,000 doses of LSD in the pure crystalline form. Then he was asked, and what would then a dosage unit sell for? At the wholesale level to the largest customers in the world, approximately 29.75 cents per dosage. And what would it sell for then on the street at the retail level, if you know? Well, I've heard as figures as high as 10, so yeah, he went with $10, which that was about accurate, between $5 and $10 on the street, depending on the person. So when a kilogram was manufactured at this lab and it was then fronted out to Petaluma Al. What was the understanding of what was the worth and what 2.975 million approximately. Okay, and how would that money get back to you, Mr. Apperson and Mr. Pickard? Oh, it would come in many forms. And we got some skipping around, which we're not going to, this is somewhat of a long script, so we're going to somewhat skip around through this one. And actually, that's true, I see down there with the CIA and shit, I do have some videos actually still of that sort of stuff. Like the CIA has done some really, really fucked up stuff with acid. One guy that they used on a test was even said to kill himself slightly after. They also used to do tests where they would slip LSD on people, animal testing. There's a bunch of old videos out there where you can see some of the stuff that the government's actually used LSD on different people, animals, and all that stuff. Which is an important thing to know too. That's one of those bigger deals that you should know about our government, things that they have done, because that really isn't okay overall. Let's see, when it was fronted out and then the money was repaid on the front, where we loaned it out until we were repaid, money would come back in the form of 20s, 50s, 100 US bills, 1,000 Guilder bills, and 1,000 Canadian dollar bills. As the flow began to increase, we got to where we refused to take 20s, and then we got to where we refused to take 50s. And we had very strict rules because of counterfeiting that was flowing in, that we wouldn't take unbanded bills, because it was just too much work for us to work through to make sure we didn't pass off counterfeit bills, which did happen, and we had encounters with the Secret Service as a result of this. So we became very careful in the form of the money we took, and we enjoyed concentrated currency, referring to 1,000 Guilder notes and particularly 1,000 Canadian dollar notes. You indicated you enjoyed them. Yes, because they were concentrated currency, meaning we didn't have to carry around suitcases full of money, and for example, 20s would just be unbearable. I mean, to deal with. We absolutely got to where we refused $20 bills. You indicated that. And by the way, $10 bills never. We don't even know what they were meant or where they went. What do you mean? No one approached us to try and give us $10 bills. So yeah, this thing was big enough to where they didn't even touch like $20 bills after a certain point. They preferred 50, 100, shit like that. That's 100% true, Lisa. Stupid people and crazy people should not eat acid. So, like, it's not for everybody. But psychedelics have some good things. And I mean, now there's studies coming out with Molly and mushrooms showing their positive effects on depression and different things like that. But just because there are some positive results that come from these substances, it's definitely, I would never recommend it for everybody. It's just not for everybody. Some brains can't take stuff. Let's see. How did money get from Petaluma Al back to you, Mr. Apperson, Mr. Pickard, to anyone else? Well, usually we would, okay, I know that we, Leonard and myself, Leonard by himself, occasionally employees of ours would go to pick it up, and there were usually two pickup spots. One was the Buckhouse Road Inn, I believe is right on the other side of the San Francisco Golden Gate Bridge. The second place was in Lyons Restaurant in Petaluma. The reason why we made a change was I became suspicious of the fact we went back to the same pickup space for the money. And also the traffic on 101 was getting to be too dense, and it was too much of a problem for Petaluma Al to drive down. And we were waiting around hours for the money or something like this, and it would be in boxes, paper sacks, just the most low-key kind of item that it could be, and so it would draw the least amount of suspicion. Then how did you get the money distributed? Depends on what the pressures were on that day. For example, there's times we would pick up 1.2 million, and by the end of the day, believe it or not, we would be virtually broke. $50,000 would be all that was left over, and we would try to pay off anyone that was owed money immediately. And these would be people like the ET man, C, and then where we were, or where Leonard was trying to get money offshore through Stephen Wathney, and we would try and make these drop-offs of money. And if there was a surplus of money, that would go to a storage rental units. The surplus of money would also go to, maybe if there was a tremendous supply, he would say, here there is 100,000 to go to this credit account for you and such. And then, of course, we just had runaround money that we always drew on. And where was that kept? The runaround money? Oh, usually in the back of the trunk of one of the vehicles. All of our vehicles and houses, hotel rooms, and we had a few problems with money being found in hotel rooms and such like that. And so this guy was actually the one living at the missile silo where they had moved the LSD Palace to, and I think it was 2000 was when they moved it to there. It might have been 1999 from Santa Fe, New Mexico. And this was in Wamego, Kansas, but they were trying to move it from there. Now, Crystal's even told, she told Vice, which I would play that video, it's short, but I don't want to get hit with the copyright from them because Vice is just too big. I know that they'll throw out copyright shit and all that. But she did say that Todd was like gathering a bunch of information on Leonard, and she thought that was kind of weird that was happening, and that was part of Todd thinking that they were about to get busted and preparing to go talk to the DEA about this situation to get his immunity, and that's basically how that played out. So Crystal, though, came into that picture, like I said earlier, as a stripper in Kansas, and Todd actually picked her up. And then they ended up getting married, and then in 2003 is when we get into like the really weird, super brutal kidnapping and things like that. But so I did see that question there, why do people divulge these details to authority? Todd here, Gordon Todd Skinner, he provided these details to 100% protect his own ass and get immunity. That was what this was, 100%. He ratted on everybody and then went on to do some really, really fucked up shit. Okay, William Pickard told me that C would only come in normal situations just to set up and tear down or clean up because Leonard did not like cleaning up the trash or just cleaning the lab up. Clyde took on more and more responsibilities of physically cleaning the lab up to keep it to where it flowed for Leonard, so he had less and less physical work to do other than production. Which again, Leonard actually went to school for this. He went to college. He studied under a guy that had a license to actually produce LSD, and then what Leonard did was he got patents from 3 other countries. I believe it was Czechoslovakia, it was Czechoslovakia, Germany, and one other country. And then what he did was he translated those patents, and from one of those patents he got the recipe that they were using to make all of this acid. So later Clyde would tell me what his functions were, which basically coincided. Although he said he was doing more cleanup and more just, washing the laundry, throwing the clothes away, anything he could do to keep this, throwing trivial trash away to gain rid of rodents or whatever that was necessary. But the actual, and in the early part, or the normal part of the Santa Fe operation, mainly Leonard did, was the only one there. And how often? When that teardown occurred, it went to both of them working literally 24 hours a day. Not for the teardown, but to get the production out to handle the stall until we got to the next facility. We, being Leonard, Clyde, and myself, got the facility in Kansas running. They wanted to anticipate that, and so they wanted to build up a surplus of LSD to feed into the market while that was being dealt with. And how much LSD was made in the lab there and how often? I cannot answer that. Why not? I wasn't there to. I can only just give rough estimations. Based upon what? Based upon the cash flow coming from Petaluma Al. Had there been other people that were being sold to, which I don't know, there could have been greater volume than was told to me. And I just don't have a good grip because Leonard was giving tremendous disinformation to Alfred because Alfred was wanting to drain as much money off of Leonard as possible. Disinformation meaning much lower production than what was really going on. He didn't want even C to know what kind of production, because he was spending so much money on things that would upset Clyde, while Clyde was waiting for money to be paid. So I assume that he could have been also misleading me, but I think that my estimation, and then there's some argument, but it was overruled. So just from the cash flow I could see coming in and adding up from what Alfred said, and then some more argument. Okay, the cash flow coming in specifically being like we would pick up 1.2 million, and 2 weeks later 1.4 million, and a week later 300,000. And so I would add this up in my head, and we would keep kind of running ledgers. So when you ask about Santa Fe, it's easier for me in the last year of the conspiracy of the Santa Fe operation for me to give you only what went through Petaluma Al. Do that. Give you an idea? Yes. A minimum of $30 million. And of that $30 million, how much did you get? It would be easier for me to tell you the whole conspiracy than describe it. Okay, do you mean the whole conspiracy? Yes. Well, I got about 1.2 million of that was easy to identify as an established amount that went to me. And then there was fractional amounts that came in that went right back out to Leonard's bills. That would be in the current Leonard expense bill account. And then there would be fractional amounts where we just owed a bill or something. And, I would pay it and he would throw me a 10,000 bundle or a 5,000 bundle. By the way, to describe the bundles of money, we had very, very strict rules on how money was to be bundled. If it had one band around it, it stood for 10,000. If it had two bands around it, then it was a 5,000 bundle. This was a universal standard, and if this was not adhered to, there was tremendous problems because it created accounting problems. Because when we would be paid bills, we would be always stuck in traffic and we would be stopping. Leonard would go into, let's say, Wathney's and just whip out a bunch of 10,000 or 5,000 bundles. And then we'd be in a hurry to make it over to the E.T. Man's hotel, which would be in Weston at the airport, and it would be whipped out there. And if that got messed up, it created incredible accounting errors. So Todd, told everything, literally everything. And again, this is why he got immunity. And then there's this really weird thing that we'll get to where he had killed someone prior to this by injecting him, which you'll understand that too once we get to the kidnapping part. Todd had a really weird fascination with drugging people up, and I would say almost looked at himself as some sort of higher being. And some of his followers even claimed that they felt like they were under the influence of psychedelic drugs just from being around him. So Todd was a very, very odd guy, and he explored a whole bunch of different kinds of drugs. But he did have this very dark side, which included the forced injection of drugs into people. But that homicide got thrown into this immunity under this deal where he never ended up getting anything for that homicide of a man. Let's see. What else do we got on Gordon here? I wonder if... Let me see if I can find where he actually explains what kind of drugs he did. If there was an absolute amount of money left, we would go to a storage unit and drop it off in there and just leave it, and we would draw from that money as necessary. How was that determined? Just if there was a serious bill or, we had to be careful about what we did with the money as far as not just going reckless, spending money, because that was a common problem. As far as income for day-to-day expenditures, how was it determined who got what? Basically, Clyde did not have much to do with that. Pickard would take whatever was necessary for whatever the hotel bills were, and these were expensive hotel bills. They would start off around $500 a night, and often we would have 2 or 3 hotel rooms, and 2 of them would not be occupied, and 1 would be occupied. Why? To kind of play a shell game, and maybe clothes and briefcase were in one, and one was where someone was staying so they could be visited, and another place could have been just something where a laptop computer and work was being done at. During that period of time, you were in this conspiracy with Mr. Pickard. Pickard, did you know to actually own a residence anywhere? Not that I know of. To your knowledge, then, where would he stay? Where was home? Well, basically, he lived in hotels and floated from hotel to hotel. After Natasha, he became heavily involved with Natasha. He would stay at her apartment, of which he had a great deal of difficulty because it wasn't small and wasn't used to the standards that he liked. And who was paying the bills for him staying in these motel rooms? Well, sometimes I would be paying for it, sometimes he would be paying for it, but as the numbers got larger and larger, we needed to flyware someone that could show that they had that kind of income coming in. So often, like if he ran a $5,000 bill up at a Ritz, I paid for it. If a $10,000 bill at the Mandarin was ran up, I paid for it. Why you? Because I had more of a history of being able to cover this, because I had a legitimate business behind me. Gardner Springs, which is not exactly true. Todd had a lot of questionable things aside from this. Let's see, what page are we on? Okay. Okay, I can give you both empirical data and also data from Leonard and also data from Clyde. Leonard typically said, and this was on, I believe, how long it took to actually make a batch. Leonard said typically if things went right, humidity was controlled and such in Santa Fe, things were ran easier, and I will later explain that. There's a humidity problem here in Kansas. In Santa Fe, approximately 10 days could take 12 days. Let's say there was a failure or he had something to do and he made a mistake. It would extend it out. That was from his knowledge, but Clyde usually would say somewhere between 10 and 14 days. It also depended on what kind of rotations they were doing, because he would be doing multiple processes to get the production up and doing multiple steps in there. Now, empirically, there would be times when I would come into Santa Fe and I would actually stay. We're in a large block of rooms and I would see him come and go during the night, and I would know that the length of time that it took. And there were times that the process was shortened because a tremendous amounts of work was going into this, and times that it was lengthened because he just didn't have the energy to put it out. He being William Leonard Pickard. And were cooks going on 24 hours a day, 7 days a week during the whole period, or how did it work? There was long gaps where the lab would sit, and he had surveillance equipment. From his mouth, I did not see the surveillance equipment installed in the Santa Fe house. Also, I did not enter the Santa Fe lab very far into it, but I did see the surveillance equipment that was later transported to Kansas. One was a plant that had a little videotape in it. Another was a picture on the wall, and there was another like a boombox or something. I could be wrong about that one, but the plant and the picture on the wall, were two definite video surveillance items. These would be triggered by motion or by some mechanism, and Leonard was very concerned about someone entering the lab while he was gone. Of course, because that meant everything was over with, So he wanted to know. He was also very concerned about sneak and peek warrants, which, like, a sneak and peek warrant basically means that they're going to look into a window or something. They're going to see something illegal, and then they're going to grab a warrant off that, kick in the door, and go in. And so during this time, we're talking about 1998, 1999. So that was before they actually moved the lab to the Wamego, Kansas place, where they were trying to move it again, which was when the bust actually occurred. Let's see. And your expectation every 5 weeks was how much LSD went out. I assume 1 kilogram. This is based upon a visual observation of a room where I was called in the middle of the night because a group of people had actually accidentally gone dosed at a hotel room. It was, I believe, Hotel Room 172, the casitas at the Hilton Santa Fe, but it was either 171, 172, or 173. These were 3 specific casitas. I believe it was the center casita, and I had to call my hotel, and Leonard said, I need you over here immediately. It was in the middle of the night. I put my clothes on. I came over. And this very elaborate box had been opened up, and there had been exposure. There were brown vials, and they were approximately, assuming each one of these vials had what I was told there would have been 1 kilogram of LSD in this box. This box fit in a specific part of what I believe was a red Cadillac or some sort of classic car. There was a hiding compartment. One of the drivers was dying of lung cancer, and I was told he looked like a... Then we got some attorneys arguing. The room who was present: Celine, a girlfriend of Leonard's, Miles Cleaver, Leonard Pickard, and then when I entered, myself. And like this, I think, goes on for a minute of just an accidental LSD exposure. Yeah, I'm not really sure if there is a whole lot more deep information on this one. Maybe a little. Okay, tell us about both protocols. The standard protocol was for Leonard. Oh, this was in case there was an exposure. The standard protocol for Leonard was Deprenyl if it was available, Valium, and then if it, for some reason, hydrocodone. And that would keep the edge off and allow... You had to balance it out to where you didn't get to where you were too down. And the Deprenyl was an accident that he actually made the initial discovery, and then we found out that the liquid Deprenyl was more effective than any of the other forms. We had a specific brand of Deprenyl that was more effective, and it did seem to block the effects, because back when I was trying to talk about how potent this is, this stuff will move right up through a latex glove. LSD will, yes. The founder, the man who first synthesized what is called LSD-25, which is just a 25th ergot compound or molecule that was derived from ergot, is not the name of an analog or anything. It is just, it was Albert Hoffman's 25th down on the list item. Hydrogen, spelled phonetically, was one. There's oxytocin was another, and these would all have a number at the end of them. So it's not some specific form of LSD. LSD is just one molecule there. There are other analogs. But I'm going to go back to your question. It is so potent that he got exposed accidentally in the lab, and that is how we came, or we almost would have never known LSD existed had he not gone back and done a second experiment. And that was Hoffman. Okay, now the dose and situation in Santa Fe that you just described, Mr. Pickard or Mr. Apperson communicate to you how that occurred. And yeah, they were just opening the box and they got exposed to it. And this is kind of weird. This is where it actually goes into the drugs that Todd used to use. So they asked him what kind of drugs he used, and his response: I would like to start with one I don't use. I never use, to the best of my knowledge, any form of tobacco product, which is a solid answer, I suppose. I never used methamphetamine, to the best of my knowledge. Never used cocaine, to the best of my knowledge. I have not used street drugs in general. I avoided most street drugs. I've not used PCP. The reason I'm doing the nots, because I've done so many unusual analogs that the list gets too long. So if we want to start that, I will start it. Are they primarily hallucinogenics or hallucinogens? Yes. Why so many hallucinogens? I can go ahead and start a laundry list. And then there's still some arguments. Okay. Well, first of all, my first use was around 19 on the cusp of 20, and I had been interested in what I call entheogen. I do not like the word hallucinogens or psychedelics. It is now common to call them entheogens. I studied them because I was interested in brain chemistry, but I did not touch them. Subsequently, then, you got into, and then we got some legal fighting. So at age 19-20, you began using hallucinogens, antigens, entheogens. Entheogens, whatever you want to call them. Mescaline was the first one that I used. Okay, and over what period of time have you used them? Since 19, I've used them. Okay, when was the last time that you did? I'm not for sure. Okay, are you under the influence of any drugs as you testify? Yes. Dextromethorphan. What is that? It's in Dayquil. So you're taking Dayquil, also aspirin. Okay. Which I do gotta admit, that was pretty well played on his part. And unfortunately, caffeine, which was now slipped into baking soda. Okay, you're not under the influence of any controlled substances during your testimony here. No, no. Were you under the influence of any controlled substances during the period of time that you were working with the DEA in this investigation? No. And just wait. That's not true. Schedule 3 diazepam, which they are fully aware of. Diazepam, which is Valium, I was taking something called diflucan, and diflucan at the levels I was taking would cause me to shake slightly, so I would take the Valium to knock off that shaking. Were these prescribed by a doctor? Yes, Okay, now during the course of your use of drugs, your recreational use of drugs, give us an idea of the drugs you took and why. The first, we'll go through the list. So mescaline, not very many times. Peyote, which is the main entheogen or active constituent of peyote, other than everything that makes you sick in there, would mescaline. Peyote is quite harsh. I've done ayahuasca. I've done pharmawascas. Those are combination things that just have monoamine oxide inhibitors in them. Well, those are teas, aren't they? Yeah, and dimethyltryptamine teas. But pharmawasca would be pure form in the crystalline of both the crystalline of the beta carbolines and dimethyltryptamine, and those in the tea form controlled substances. It's a federal judge has made this an ambiguous thing as of August of last year, so I can't tell you. They should be under reading of the laws, they should be controlled substances, but under the Religious Freedom Restoration Act of 1993, a federal judge has ruled that UDV sacraments may have to be given back to them by customs when a seized occurred. But classically, they would be considered Schedule 1 items. Okay, other drugs that you've used during this period of time. Yes, salvia divorium, legal. And then its active constituent, a diterpene called salvinorin A, which is interesting because it's a naturally occurring compound that is almost a microgram, as potent as LSD. There are some other fractions on down that may be more potent than LSD, short-acting. 5-methoxy and dimethyltryptamine, which is a common story of people licking the toad, which is not what you do. That is dangerous, causes foaming of the mouth. But the Sonoran desert toad has this excretion that if you excrete it onto a glass slide, you can scrape off the material and you'll get the main constituent being 5-methoxy and dimethyltryptamine. Going on, other sources would be Phalaris arudinacea, I don't think I said that one right, which is called canary reed grass or reed canary grass, which is all over the place along with Phalaris aquatica. It grows in ditches all over the world, and that yields, reporter interruption. Okay, an experiment with Amanita muscaria, different variations, Flotarita, spelled phonetically and such, flyhydrate, which is another name of the mushroom. I went through an elaborate process and consumed ibotenic acid, which would have been an active constituent. I rarely did this. I was nervous about the research because of the decarboxylation of ibotenic acid that converts to muscimol, which is an active constituent of fly agate, or Amanita muscaria, which is potentially the soma that is mentioned in the Reg Vita, which is one of the oldest known sacramental plant usage on the planet. I will continue to go. So this guy was into some really, really weird shit. He was definitely into some of the more intense and less known hallucinogens. I have used 5-fluoroalpha-methyltryptamine, 6-fluoroalpha-methyltryptamine. I've used reserpine. Accidentally, that was a mistake. Racemethorpan, which I may not. The cane was extracted from Indian snake root. Yes, I smoked marijuana 6 times. I dislike it intensely. I do like that after everything else, he just went with marijuana 6 times. Keamine, spelled phonetically, a dissociative anesthesia, which hits PCP1, or if the nomenclature PCP-A receptor site, then many analogs of the tryptamine family I've experimented with, and this could be a long session if we went on. Why take all those? And this was actually one of the things. He didn't take a lot of the stuff at an early age that he was. Again, he had a very weird thing with getting other people high on drugs. Well, early on I wanted to see what my guinea pig operations were in the From my early high school days to age 19, I decided to go and take the step of actually experimenting. I was a little nervous with messing with the neural complex of the mind, so I gathered up data. How? Oh, all of my high school friends just lined up to take anything that I had. And they were volunteering, so it wasn't a problem. It really helped me get through the things I had no interest in taking. In your knowledge of chemical composition of things, do you have a chemistry degree? Where does this information come from? Where did you accumulate it from reading and experimentation and such? Although I did get advanced, some sort of honors in chemistry in high school. Do you have any formal education after high school? Yes, in Germany I went to school in Heidelberg, and mainly it was concentrated around finance, international banking, and those kind of things. And specifically, I took some classes in the math involved with foreign currency fluctuations and the math involved in how to do the Black Scholes model. And that's the extent of your post-high school schooling, is that correct? Yeah. Formal education. I also took some classes in DIN standard, which is German Standard of Manufacturing, kind of like mil specs. And it is where the United States has taken QS 9002 standards from would be the DIN standard. During any of your conversations with either Mr. Pickard or Mr. Apperson, did you discuss your personal drug use? Yes. With whom? With Leonard extensively, and with Clyde occasionally. What was the purpose of those discussions and what was said? Well, Leonard was interested in comparing notes of what he had done and what I had done. And then he was interested in what kind of effects and what kind of things had happened in those in his interest. Had he indicated his personal usage of some or of all these items as well? No, he indicated that he had used would-be mescaline, LSD. The first time I was supposed to meet him, I did not show up because of a snowstorm, and I was responsible for bringing Phalaris arudinacea, I'm not saying that right, to something called someplace like New Buffalo Resort or something like that in around Taos, New Mexico. And I never made it, but they did end up doing some form of pharmahuascas or ayahuasca. Then we got some legal dispute stuff. 96, 97. During your discussion with Mr. Pickard, on other occasions, did he indicate personal use of controlled substances other than what you've just described? Yes, MD. When and where? Well, in the 70s and 60s, he was talking about he had tried just about everything that came out of the labs that he could get his hands on, and anything that Sasha had designed, he had tried, if it was available to him. And I believe Sasha, that was actually the doctor that had the license to make the acid legally for research purposes for the government that Leonard actually learned under. And they talk about the effects of mescaline and shit, and it kind of goes off track for a while. Let's see. And I have links in the descriptions to this transcript, I believe. And because of the fact, the software that I use, I can't, put too many characters. So this is one of those videos I'm going to have to go back in and add the rest of the stuff that I have pulled up here. But I think this part of the transcript kind of goes off into a lot of argument between the attorneys and just kind of more of who Todd was. So I want to kind of move on to this darker part, because I don't want to really, we're only 60 pages there. So if I can get Leonard on, if I can get Crystal on, that's when we can go into a little bit more of what actually was going on there. But so in 2000, that's when everybody was convicted. That's when they were busted. I'm actually not sure if the conviction was then. This is a general run. Everything ended in 2000, but it didn't end for Gordon Todd Skinner or Crystal Cole. And this is where things start to get kind of weird. Todd was a lunatic, and he married Crystal. Todd was very controlling, and Crystal apparently had been talking to this 18-year-old, Brandon Green. And so Todd had Crystal trick Brandon into coming over to these hotels in Oklahoma with her. And this is why Todd is currently in jail. Gordon Todd Skinner was charged and convicted of conspiracy to commit kidnapping AFCF under 21 blah, 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 blah. So he's kidnapping AFCF, assault and battery with a dangerous weapon in the District Court of Tulsa County. In accord with the jury's recommendations, Honorable Gordon D. McAllister sentenced Skinner to imprisonment for 30 years and a $10,000 fine on count 1, imprisonment for 60 years and a $10,000 fine on count 2, and imprisonment for life and a $10,000 fine on count 3 to be served consecutively. Skinner is properly before the court on direct appeal. Here's the facts of the situation, and there's been appeals in a lot of these cases. Skinner keeps on trying to appeal to get out, and then also there was a big deal going on with Leonard's case where they were trying to appeal to get Skinner's CI information, and they had forgotten on that. Or they like denied on a bunch of it, and they refused FOIA. That was kind of a whole different deal. But the facts of this situation: even a careful review of the record in this case leaves unanswered many questions about what exactly happened to 18-year-old Brandon Green beginning over the 4th of July weekend in 2003 at the hands of defendant Gordon Todd Skinner, and with the assistance of his co-defendants Crystal Ann Cole Skinner and William Ernst Hawk. It is even more unclear why it happened. What is fairly clear, however, is that Green joined Skinner and Cole, who were staying at the downtown Tulsa Doubletree Hotel in early July of 2003. Skinner was known for hosting gatherings at this and other locations where illegal psychedelic drugs would be given out, often his own concoctions and often as part of a pseudo-religious ceremony that Skinner would lead. So this is 3 hours after the bust, and like I said, Todd had this very weird thing where he liked to dose other people, and he had this like almost like he thought of himself as some sort of deity type thing. Todd sounds like he has some issues overall. Green was expecting to party with Skinner and Cole and to prepare for some kind of business venture with Skinner, which involved harbor dredging work in the Caribbean. Green considered Skinner to be his friend and referred to Cole, whom he had been dating for a few months, as his girlfriend, even though she had apparently just married Skinner. Cole had previously been involved with Skinner, but she had recently been trying to get away from him with the help of Green because Skinner was so violent and controlling. It is also clear that on July 3rd, 2003, at the request of Skinner, Green drove from Tulsa to Oklahoma City to pick up Bill Hawk, whom Green had not met previously, and bring him back to the hotel. Hawk was a truck driver and had a long history of working for and with Skinner, and he expected to be involved in the dredging venture. Hawk had his own room on a different floor and was in and out of the hotel and Skinner's rooms for the next 5 days. Meanwhile, Cole remained in and around the adjoining 14th floor rooms during the same time. The exact extent of Hawk and Cole's willing participation in the subsequent kidnapping and torture of Green at the hotel was a matter of some dispute at trial. But there was no dispute among the testifying witnesses, who were there at the time, Green, Hawk, Cole, and later Christy Roberts, that Skinner was very much running the show. On the other hand, Hawk and Cole freely admitted that they did nothing to try and stop Skinner. They made no effort to get Green any kind of help, even though they could see his injuries and hear him moaning in pain and begging for help. Nor did they contact law enforcement authorities or anyone else on Green's behalf. So this kind of goes back to what I was talking about with when Vice interviewed Crystal, because again, they made it very much about like the LSD Palace and like her art and her paintings and shit. They kind of left this whole part out, and so that kind of helped Crystal get this online following, and this where she talks about psychedelic use and things of that nature. Oh, wait, okay, we're right here. Brandon Green remembers that on July 4th, 2003, he voluntarily ingested several what Skinner described as the Eucharist, believing that the Catholic communion wafers that Skinner provided would be laced with LSD, as on previous occasions with Skinner had given to Green. Green expected that the wafers would cause him to trip, but instead he was rendered completely unconscious. Green testified that his next memory was of waking up naked on the hotel bathroom floor, with his hands, legs, and mouth duct taped, and with Skinner standing over him, kicking him in the groin area as hard as he could and saying, "You should have never touched my fiancé, you should have never touched my fiancé." Green remembers that he eventually passed out during the assault, and then he woke up. Skinner was kneeling over him with a hypodermic needle, injecting something into his penis. Green's comprehension then got extremely blurry, and he has very few clear memories of the incredible torture that he was subjected to over the next 4 days at the Tulsa Doubletree and then at the Houston area motel after that. Evidence presented at the trial established that the torture at the Tulsa hotel included numerous and repeated injections by Skinner into Green's penis, testicles, buttocks, and other parts of his body, with the apparent dual purpose of permanently disabling and disfiguring Green sexually and of keeping him in a prolonged state of unconsciousness while he was being physically, sexually, and emotionally assaulted by Skinner. Skinner also brutally punched and kicked Green in the genitals, lifted Green's unconscious body off the bed by grabbing him by the base of his genitals and, Jesus Christ, and wrapped a phone cord around Green's penis, put his foot on Green's stomach, and jerked until he heard the cartilage snap. So this is the guy that got immunity, and he'd already killed someone, but because he ratted out Leonard, this was the guy that was given immunity and didn't go to jail and was allowed to go on to do this, all because he ratted on Leonard and got no time whatsoever. And remind you, we'll get to the other murder part in a second, but again, that was from him doing another injecting thing to a person, and that was at the Wamego, Kansas missile silo where the LSD was being made. Jesus Christ, dude. A phone cord wrapped around the penis, foot on the stomach, and jerked until cartilage snapped. Like that, I don't even know. I've never heard of some shit like that happening before. I'm cutting in and out. Does anybody else think I'm cutting in and out? So far, you're the only one to say that, Nick. Chrissy Roberts testified at the trial. Yeah, Nick, I think that might just be you. But yeah, I've never heard of some shit like that. And not to mention, it sounds like all of it. I mean, he kicked him in the genitals until he passed out, and then was injecting things into the genitals, and then actually snapping cartilage with a phone cord. That I've never heard of anything like that. I've never heard anything like that. Chrissy Roberts testified at trial that she met Green, Skinner, and Cole early in 2003. She had taken psychedelic drugs provided by Skinner, including the Eucharist, and she had a very close friendship with Skinner. Roberts testified that she stopped by the hotel during the early morning hours of July 2nd, 2003, and then she did not return to the hotel until late evening on July 5th after being picked up by Hawk in Green's car. After chatting with Skinner and Cole, Roberts discovered Green lying on the bed in room 1411 in a sedated state. Skinner and Cole had told her that Green had tried to keep up with Skinner taking Eucharist. Roberts left again that night and did not return again until the next night. You walked into something, Sneaky Pete. Yes, Kim, this is over a woman. This is because his wife, Crystal Cole, who is around during the LSD Palace days, had been hooking up with this Brandon Green. And so I don't know. This story takes a really dark turn. You didn't hear about a lot of this with a little bit of coverage that this LSD Palace did get, which really even the LSD Palace side of things, I don't think got exactly enough coverage. But all in all, it's an odd story, and there's still a murder involved in this that there's been no justice for whatsoever with Skinner here, or Todd. When Roberts arrived on July 6 and asked asked where Skinner and Green were, Cole directed her to room 1411, saying, "It's not as bad as it looks." Roberts found Green lying on the bathroom floor with duct tape around his head and face, his hands duct taped to his feet behind him, and with a KFC cup over his penis. Roberts testified that Green was very upset, tripping really hard, and that when she finally got the duct tape off his mouth, he was talking but not making a lot of sense. You got to remember that while they were doing all these torturing to his genitals and whatnot, he was injecting him with different hallucinogens. I believe the hallucinogens range from LSD to DMT to a few other drugs. So, I mean, if you've ever taken hallucinogens before, being duct taped up and having the cartilage snapped in your penis, like, it really does not get, that's not an ideal tripping environment, obviously. But just from that sort of negative things happening in the middle of a hallucinogenic experience, you are talking about things that can cause some permanent brain damage and just permanent thought process damage and paranoid schizophrenia. You know, there's a lot of damage that can come from doing something like that to someone while under the influence of those drugs. And then constantly putting more and more, like, I mean, this is cruel. This is a different level of cruel. This is a super, super fucking cruel form of punishment right here, or torture, not even punishment. Roberts testified that Cole told her Green had gotten into something, the green liquid, and that Robert should wear socks on her hands and not touch any of the substance that was on Green. Roberts testified that she gave Green a bath. He started saying that his balls were hurting and that Skinner had shot him in the balls. Roberts could tell that Green was in a lot of pain and could see that his testicles were very swollen and that his penis was injured. She got Green back into bed and tried to comfort him and to convince Skinner and Cole to take him to a hospital, but they refused, saying that Green had injured himself during a bad trip. As Green became more lucid over the next few hours, he started telling Skinner that he was sorry he slept with his girlfriend and that he thought they were friends. Green begged Roberts to find out if Cole was involved in what was happening to him. So Roberts went down to the lobby with Cole for a few minutes to talk to her. By the time Roberts returned, Green was laying on the bed drooling, no longer able to speak, and Skinner told her that he just gave him something to put him to sleep. After staying with the now sleeping Green for a while to make sure he was still breathing, Roberts left and went to go sleep in a different room on the 15th floor. When Roberts woke up the next morning, Cole told her that Green had left and was probably going to the police. Roberts testified that she believed Green had left on his own since he was no longer in room 1411, and his car keys had been taken from the place where she had hidden them in that room. Roberts assumed everything was going to be fine after Green recovered from his trip. Yeah, I 100% agree with you there, Craig. Like I don't even know. I'd never heard this part of the story with this. I don't know. I knew all about the palace and everything. I didn't know about this part of the story. Let's see. Earlier that same morning of July 7th, 2003, Skinner determined that Green needed to be moved out of room 1411 because a housekeeper had discovered they were using that room without paying for it, and had seen Green on the bed, and also to get Green away from Roberts. Skinner directed Hawk and Cole to move Green, then barely conscious, to Hawk's room on the 18th floor, and to tell Roberts that Green had woken up and left the hotel. Skinner then ordered Hawk, Cole, and Roberts to clean up the 14th floor rooms, which they did. After that, Skinner sent Roberts off with his luggage to get a room at another hotel, and she did not return to the DoubleTree. Skinner gave Green further injections in the new room to keep him from waking up. On July 8, 2003, Skinner hatched a plan that Green's body would be totally shaved and then dumped in a remote area of Texas. Skinner told Hawk to cut Green's long blonde curly hair, which he did. Skinner then sent Hawk to find a large wardrobe box in a bellman's cart. Hawk testified that when he returned, Green's head had been completely shaved and that Skinner and Cole were also shaving his legs and eyebrows. Hawk testified that after they finished, Skinner poured alcohol and Epsom salt on Green's body, claiming that it would destroy DNA evidence. After Skinner gave Green an additional injection to keep him out, they dressed him, put him in the box, put the box on a hotel cart, rolled the cart out to Green's own car, which was parked in the hotel parking lot, wrapped him in a blanket, then buckled Green's limp body into the front passenger seat. Skinner directed Hawk to drive to the Houston area, where Skinner would later join, and gave Hawk an additional syringe to use on Green in case if he started to wake up. Hawk testified that he never injected Green with anything, but that when Green started to wake up during the trip, Hawk hit him twice on the face and that Green was in enough of a weakened condition that it knocked him out. Hawk testified that they arrived at a motel in the Houston area during the early morning hours of July 9th, that when Green started waking up again, he tied him down to the bed in the room, and they were joined by Cole and Skinner that afternoon. Green was held in the room until the evening of July 10th, 2003. During that time, Skinner gave him additional injections to keep him unconscious and ordered Hawk to give Green oral antibiotics, claiming that it would help heal the injection marks. During this time, Skinner also prepared a foul-smelling tea, which he both forced Green to drink and injected him with, causing Green to vomit violently. Both Hawk and Green testified about a particularly disturbing thing that Green vomited up, which had little worm-like things in it, and that Skinner claimed was a parasite sac. In addition, and at the direction of Skinner, Green's eyes were covered, and he was told that if he took the covering off, his retinas would be burned. Skinner then pretended to be a Swedish doctor who had come to help Green, but who actually tormented him and put suppositories and perhaps other things in Green's anus. Like, this just keeps on going worse and worse. Oh, sorry, Kim, I just saw that. No, there's a green substance that he used as well. And so they told Roberts not to touch him with the bare hands. They were telling Roberts to put socks on her hands to not get this unknown green liquid on them. Later in the day, and you know, this is a weird thing too. This isn't even just Todd. It turns out, actually, last year, this guy right here, man accused of fatally stabbing relative in French Quarter home, begins building insanity defense. 26-year-old Morgan Ross Skinner, this is his fucking kid. By many indications, 26-year-old Morgan Ross Skinner had a turbulent upbringing before he allegedly stabbed his father's stepbrother to death at a French Quarter home last month. When Ross Skinner was about 5, his father, according to news reports, helped produce much of the LSD available in the United States at his home, a 1960s-style commune at the site of an abandoned Kansas missile silo. When Ross Skinner was 13, his father was handed a life sentence for drugging, torturing, and kidnapping a man who previously dated his wife. This was last year that his kid fucking stabbed his stepbrother to death. So this is like something that 100%, like, I don't even know, man. This bloodline's just whatever. Kennedy, hello. This is a very odd and the darker side of America's largest LSD bust, the LSD Palace, and what happened, and the very, very heinous actions of the man that was given immunity to testify against the chemist behind the underground LSD Palace that was busted in 2000 in Wamego, Kansas. Okay, so where were we? Late in the day on July 10th, Skinner directed Hawk to take Green and dump him along with his car in a deserted area in rural Texas, where it would be unlikely that Green would be found or get help quickly. Cole was directed to follow Hawk, who was driving Green's car, to bring Hawk back after he had dumped Green. Green was given a final injection by Skinner before they left. Cole and Hawk stopped at a convenience store on the way to buy some water and chocolate candy to leave with Green, since they knew he had not had any food and only limited fluids since the ordeal began, which was like 6 days prior. Let me see. They then drove to an area along the highway outside of Texas City, Texas. Hawk testified that he decided to leave Green in a field along the highway, which was between a busy county road and a busy interstate, because he believed it would give Green the best chance. Hawk then placed Green, still nearly catatonic, on a blanket on the ground next to the car, leaving the keys to the car and food and water inside with the doors locked. So that's super helpful. Green testified that his first memory that night was of hearing his car door open and being picked up by Hawk, like you would a little baby, and being placed down in the grass, and that he was so grateful that he was going to be allowed to sleep. When Green woke up later that night, Hawk was gone. Green crawled to his car, only to find that even though his cars were visible in the driver's seat, all the doors were locked, and he wept. The next morning, Green began the long, painful crawl to the highway, since he could hear traffic. Green testified that he would crawl a few feet and then would pass out, before waking up to crawl a few more feet, that he used his shoes as a pillow, and that he brought along the blanket he had found in the grass. Green's naked and nearly lifeless body was found along the Texas highway by Texas City Police Officer Neil Mora around 8 a.m. on July 11, 2003. Mora testified that he wasn't sure what he was seeing at first, that Green had a blanket around his lower half, and that he was very weak and completely pale. When he looked more closely, Mora could see numerous cuts on Green's head and bruising all over his body. Mora commented that Green looked pretty horrific. Green was taken to the Mainland Medical Center in Texas and put in the intensive care unit. At the trial, jury was shown video of Green, which was taken at the hospital within a few hours after he was found. The jury was also shown pictures of Green's battered body, including extensive bruising and ligature marks from being tied up, and his incredibly swollen, discolored, and damaged genitals. Green testified that he spent about a week in the hospital, during which time his lung collapsed due to the trauma he had endured. He noted that he was unable to walk even when he was released, and he remained in a wheelchair for months. In addition, Green testified that even though it had been nearly 3 years since the ordeal, he continued to need weekly medical care, and that he had constant pain and nerve damage in his groin area and a large mass in his left testicle. Green noted that he had done a lot of research, including parasite research, trying to figure out what exactly Skinner had injected him with, because he had suffered from numerous illnesses since the kidnapping and been unable to fully recover. In particular, Green testified that despite his concerted efforts to man up since the kidnapping, he remained unable to put on weight or gain muscle mass. Let's see. And this was him actually trying to appeal to all of this. But let me see. Because this is the one I was thinking of. I think this may have testimonies from Brandon. But we'll see some footnotes here. Because I also, before Leonard was released this year, there was a Free Leonard Pickard campaign, and the website actually put together a really good timeline of Gordon Todd Skinner. Judgment and sentence documents in this case fail to accurately record that in regard to each of Skinner's 3 counts, he was convicted and sentenced after former conviction of a felony. The court herein orders correction of these documents accordingly. Cole and Hawk were charged along with Skinner in counts 1 and 2, but not in count 3. Both Cole and Hawk testified for the state against Skinner at his solo trial. They both testified that they did not have any deal with the state in exchange for their assistance in testimony, but that they had hoped that assistance would be given some consideration in their case. Cole and Skinner were staying in rooms 1409 and 1411, which were adjoining, even though the hotel was unaware at the time they were using room 1411. Evidence presented at trial indicated that Skinner had previously hosted parties in these same 2 rooms. Cole testified at trial that she and Skinner had always had an open relationship, which included dating other people, even when they were together. She testified that in early July of 2003, she still considered Green to be her boyfriend, even though he had a vague memory of marrying Skinner, or she had a vague memory of marrying Skinner on June 27, 2003, while under the influence of drugs. Cole testified that she was in love with Green at the time and that he was shocked that she married Skinner. Cole described Christy Roberts as Skinner's girlfriend during the same time period, and Roberts testified at trial that when she came by room 1409 on the night of July 2, 2003, Skinner, Cole, and Green were all sleeping together in a single bed. Skinner did not testify. Both Cole and Hawk testified that they were afraid of Skinner, and that in addition to being large, strong, violent, and manipulative, Skinner was believed to possess certain mental powers to control other people. That goes back to that whole weird part of this shit. Hawk was reluctant to claim that he thought Skinner had actual mind control over him, but Hawk did testify that for some reason he did as he was told regarding Green, without thinking for himself, and that he was afraid that the next needle would be mine. Even Green testified that he believed Skinner had the power to make people in his presence feel like they were tripping on psychedelic drugs, without having taken any such drugs, and that he and Cole had both experienced this phenomenon in Skinner's presence. Skinner told the people around him that he was a government agent, and his friends knew that he had a history of working with federal DEA agents. Hawk also admitted that early on in the ordeal he helped Skinner bind Green with duct tape after being told that Green, who was unconscious, had had a bad trip, the previous 9 gone violent and destructive. Hawk testified that Skinner later warned him that he could never claim that he was not involved since Hawk had participated in binding Green. Cole likewise testified that Green's reaction to the wafers provided by Skinner was very unusual and unexpected. Cole testified that she had an extensive history with the knowledge of psychedelic drugs based upon actually trying 20 or 30 different kinds herself, learning about them from Skinner and observing people at the drug parties, reading numerous books about them, and even publishing her own book entitled Lysergic. Skinner bragged at the time of the genitalia injections he was giving Green would cause his genitals to shrivel up and fall off, and that other substances he was injecting Green with would erase his memory about what had happened. Cole testified that it was normal for Skinner to give people stuff if he wanted to knock them out. Cole also testified that she was aware of a number of the substances that Skinner injected into Green, including the Downers, Valium, and Klonopin. She also testified that Skinner put a green liquid substance into Green's mouth while he was knocked out, which got on Green's face. Cole noted that when she got a drop of the substance on her arm, it caused her arm to go numb and stay numb for 20 minutes or more, which really concerned her. Skinner told her that the green liquid was Salvinorin A or C. So they're like dumping this unknown green fluid on this guy, and she gets a drop on her arm, and her arm went numb for 20 minutes. So I don't know that they actually ever did identify fully the green substance that they put in Brandon Green's mouth and on his skin. Roberts noted that Green was wearing a shirt at the time and that the bottom half of his body was under the covers. Roberts testified that Green suddenly started freaking out and that when she looked behind her, Skinner was standing there holding a steak knife. Green seemed very scared or afraid of Skinner, but allowed Roberts to use the knife to slowly cut off the duct tape. Roberts acknowledged that she could have called the police, but didn't because she was afraid of bringing negative attention to the group. Hawk testified that Skinner was concerned because Green was talking to Roberts and getting more coherent, so he asked Cole to get Roberts out of the room for a while. While they were gone, Hawk saw Skinner give Green an injection in his buttocks that rendered him almost catatonic. Hawk testified that he had to take duct tape off Green's wrists and legs before they could move him, which had apparently been reapplied after Roberts removed it the previous day, and that Green was out of it at the time they moved him and left him in a new room. Hawk testified that Skinner wanted to leave him down in South Texas, and he wanted him to look like he was homosexual. And Skinner said, the good old boys of Texas wouldn't pursue it, just another homosexual. Hawk testified that Cole was laughing, and this is another part, because remember, she didn't go to jail, really, or anything. She testified as well. Hawk testified that Cole was laughing and mocking Green as she shaved his eyebrows and that she seemed to be having fun. Cole, on the other hand, testified that Skinner did all the shaving and that she feared Hawk, as well as Skinner, and they both ordered her around. Cole testified that Epsom salt was placed on Green's genital area and that it was bleach, and bleach was poured over him, causing horrible, irritating fumes to fill the room. Green had only foggy memories of the most of the ordeal, but he remembers certain events, such as when Hawk hit him during the drive. Nevertheless, at trial, Green described Hawk as mostly a comforting, reassuring, and even gentle and non-aggressive presence, that Hawk gave him Gatorade, and that Hawk was only mean to him when Skinner was around. Green testified about the horrible tea that he was forced to drink, that afterward he threw up things that he called jellyfish because of the see-through appearance, which had like little worms swimming around inside of them. Cole testified that Skinner's Swedish doctor was intended to confuse Green about what had happened, and that Skinner was regularly giving Green a combination of psychedelics, barbiturates, opiates, and anything that he could to make Green not be able to remember. Green testified that he eventually recognized the voice of the Swedish doctor as being Skinner, and that the things that Skinner shoved up his anus caused a tear in his anus. Skinner told Hawk that he wanted Green dropped off around dusk so that, Skinner, Todd is a really, really, really dark mind. Skinner told Hawk that he wanted Green dropped off around dusk so that the mosquitoes and chiggers would be active and would cover the injection sites. So, I mean, he was even thinking that small down, that like he wanted chiggers and mosquitoes to bite these areas where he'd been shooting up Brandon Green for the last 6 days with a variety of different drugs. Which many of the injection sites were around the penis and genital area. This guy had, not to mention, he believed he had some sort of mental control over people, and his little followers believed that he had mental control as well. Hawk acknowledged, however, that a hospital would have the place where Green truly had the best chance to survive. Hawk testified that he was certain that he left the passenger side door unlocked, but when Green woke up and when authorities later found the car, all doors were locked. Green testified that he left his clothes in the field since they were so dirty and nasty. In the video, Green struggles to speak and is obviously very weak, very sick, and very confused. He talks about having a lot of trouble with his memory, which he attributes to taking too much Eucharist, and he does not remember much about what happened, though he does remember that Skinner gave him an injection in his penis while at the Tulsa Doubletree. Green also talks about the awful night that he spent in the field after William left him, that he cried all night, that he was so sick that he really struggled to take off his pants because he had to go to the bathroom, and that he kept falling and hoping someone would come help him. Almost 5 months after Skinner's trial and conviction, Cole pled no contest to accessory after the fact of kidnapping. Later, on March 26, 2007, she was placed on probation for 5 years, ordered to pay $52,109 in restitution, and given a deferral of sentencing until March 26, 2012. One day after Cole's plea, Hawkwise likewise pled guilty to accessory after the fact of kidnapping. He was immediately sentenced in accord with the plea agreement and based upon only one of his 5 prior convictions to a suspended sentence of 10 years without supervision, a $250 fine, and $5,000 victims' compensation assessment. Yeah, Lee, that's her, which again, I don't know if you heard that earlier. She actually is on my Facebook friends list. I did ask Leonard already. I've emailed him, the chemist behind the palace. I've asked him to come on. And here, once my Facebook account is out of Facebook jail in like 4 days, I'm going to see if Crystal wants to come on alive. Because I feel like there's a lot of questions about this situation. And again, I feel like this situation is an interesting situation all around. And it didn't really get a good amount of coverage or anything. And I think some important parts of it were kind of skipped over, especially now that Crystal's almost become this role of like, I don't know, somebody very, I don't know if I'm going to go as far as very important, but somebody known amongst the psychedelic community. I mean, her YouTube channel has, 132,000 subscribers. January of 2003, Skinner was ordered to testify in the federal trial of William Leonard Pickard in the Federal District Court of Kansas and was granted use and derivative use immunity regarding his testimony by the judge in that case. Skinner acknowledged in the trial that his testimony in Pickard's trial was completed well before he met Brandon Green in April 2003. Let's see. Some of this stuff I don't think is quite as important, which I'll skip over some of this. And again, a lot of this stuff will be in the description. I don't know if this one's already in the description. So I'll add this stuff to the description, but I do want to do those other two, or possibly one. I don't know if I'm going to do 2 or 1 lives tonight, but there is that Arlena Willis live, and then there's a Kirk Pendergrass. So I don't know if I want to put those 2 together. I don't even want to do the Arlena one, but just with her court coming up, I want to keep track of her going out and breaking these court orders, of talking about her victim, and then Kirk Pendergrass. If you're not aware of who that is one of my sovereigns that I'm trying to stay on top of his ass to make sure that he crumbles as a human being, because he's a terrible human being. So I don't know that I want to do those 2 in the same, just for like search results and everything. So I don't know. Odious Maximus indeed. So like after this live, I'll probably take like a 10, 15, 20 minute break and then go right back up with one of the next ones. And I think that's probably what I'll do. I'll probably do them both separate. So that's why I'm kind of skipping through some of this stuff. Not to mention that I think some of it we'll just go deeper into if I can get some of these people on. So hopefully we can get them to agree. But there was one part, and I thought it was there. Maybe it isn't. This, though. This was put together by the Free Leonard website. And this, so what was going on was most of this came from their legal and stuff. I mean, this is not just a guesstimation of things put together. This is a pretty solid rundown of Gordon Todd Skinner's life from the age 18 on. I think maybe this has it, because there's statements from the victim, from Brandon Green, the guy that they held hostage, and Todd did all this to. But from the age of 18 on, this guy had a pretty fucked up life. Like, he did a lot of shitty things. So, turned 18 back in 1982. In 1983, Skinner purchases traveler's check in Tulsa, reports them stolen, makes claim for redemption, then travels to Las Vegas, Nevada, and attempts to cash the check using fraudulent identification. After casino cage manager detects fraudulent ID, Skinner is arrested with briefcase containing his stepfather's sidearm. Skinner's stepfather, Gary Magrini, an IRS agent, intercedes on the arrest to prevent conviction. Which that's interesting. Okay, so he made it sound like in his court testimony that he did finish the schooling. Gordon Todd Skinner attempts 5 business courses during 1 semester at the Heidelberg classroom of Schiller International University, a Florida-based business school. Upon completing 1 course, Skinner drops out, ending his formal education. Skinner returns to Tulsa, Oklahoma. And his days as a rat and snitching people out dates all the way back to 1983. As an informant in the United States versus Yvonne Wilson, J.F. Spann, Sam Merritt, and Oded Benery, Gordon Todd Skinner testified that he cooperated in a 1983 case but refused to disclose the details. He later changed the dates to 1984-85, stating that he initiated a case involving money laundering by turning over cashier's checks, and the investigation was conducted by multiple federal agencies. Skinner stated he was never the subject of any investigation. His stepfather dies, or wait, no, he didn't die yet. He was assigned to DEA. In the Merritt case, Gordon Todd Skinner also testified that in early part of 1984, he initiated an investigation into a woman business associate by calling FBI agent Thomas McLean. After more than 2 years, the woman was arrested and convicted for an apparent Ponzi scheme. Skinner again states that he was never the subject of any investigation. First meets Merritt. In 1984, in Merritt, Skinner stated he called a federal judge named O'Brien in St. Croix about Merritt and Coral Air to research the company. In 1984, in Merritt trial, 1991, Skinner testified that he had no legal problems with the criminal justice system at the time he met Merritt. The next day, after Skinner called the FBI, Skinner began recording conversations with Merritt at the instruction of the FBI. And one thing about this is that the DEA actually fought Leonard's attorneys over his entire CI record, over everything that he'd done, because they claimed he'd only used them 1 time. But obviously, I think they found at least a total of 6 times that Todd had been an informant for the federal government, dating back to 1983. Let's see if... Which this is another one that will go back, or will go in the description. But this is another one that I'm going to skip through just because they really did break down his life for pretty good. His life since he was 18 years old. In 1987, approximate, Gordon Todd Skinner assigned DEA Natus number 2002804. He was 22 years old at that point. In 1987, Gordon Todd Skinner arrested in Boston for marijuana and $18,000 in cash. Charges changed from possession with intent to simple possession and dropped completely after 90 days, according to Skinner and later testimony. Boris Olarte, charged with marijuana possession alert, reported to offer an individual $20,000 to help him break out of jail by helicopter. Skinner is arrested in lobby of Cherry Hill, New Jersey Hyatt and charged under the Kingpin statute With $1 million bail set for marijuana distribution, DA Lawrence Magid of Woodbury, New Jersey, discusses at hearing Skinner's drug connections in several states and Skinner's prior detention for marijuana importation on Mexican border. Skinner's attorney is Sam Bullock. While incarcerated, Skinner meets John Worthy in jail before Worthy's release and contacts prosecutor from jail to set up Worthy and two of his associates on marijuana charges. So he was even inside jail making calls to set people up. Claire LaSalle both testify against Abelo Silva. LaSalle resided with Skinner's mother, Catherine McGreeny, who cooperated with the FBI to convict Abelo Silva to reduce a large sentence. 1989, Skinner is removed from jail in New Jersey by federal authorities to testify, while in custody, housed in hotel and federal facilities in order to cooperate in yet another federal criminal case. 1989, Skinner is released from Gloucester County Jail after 11 months in order to cooperate against John Worthy in a New Jersey state case and against others in an unknown federal case. In the 2003 Kansas trial, Skinner testified that he worked as an informant in Florida from 1989 through 1992, identifying communication systems for narco-terrorist operations, then changed the years to 90, 91, 92. 1990, Skinner purchases marijuana from John Worthy and two of Worthy's associates while recording calls to Worthy. 1990, Skinner tells FBI agent Reno Walker that he was arrested in Boston on narcotics and currency violations. 1991, Skinner testifies that he cooperated in another investigation 4 months prior to this. That lasted 2 months and also during time in jail in New Jersey. Skinner also testifies that he cooperated with multiple federal agencies on a case involving money laundering and that he was contacted by a federal law enforcement agency while in Gloucester County Jail about another unspecified investigation. So this guy was, Todd Skinner, like, he lived his life as a fucking rat, basically, which is what allowed him to do this for so long. 1991, in a rare event for a government witness, Skinner in the Merritt trial invoked the Fifth Amendment on 52 occasions to prevent self-incrimination during his testimony. Matters relating to Skinner's criminal activity that Skinner refused to describe to the jury and occurring during the period he also acted as an informant for federal agencies include, but are not limited to, and there's a whole fucking list. 1991, Skinner is sentenced to 3 years probation in New Jersey, case in exchange for testifying against John Worthy and others. 91, Skinner is deactivated as informant by DEA. Renews his passport. 1992, he was sued in federal court by Pickard Capital on behalf of financial operation groups. After jury trial in Tulsa, Oklahoma, Pickard Capital was awarded $4.5 million in damages against Skinner, Finex, and Skinner's mother, Catherine McGreeny, for financial fraud without assets. Skinner files for bankruptcy. McGreeny settles her portion of the suit, agreeing to pay $100,000 in damages. Skinner gets married to Kelly Roth. Roth divorces him in 96. Late 90 through 92, a Skinner associate in Florida begins to sell fraudulent offshore bank shares through his various salesmen. 93, Skinner testifies as informant in United States versus LeVay McKinley, United States versus George Jim Conway, and United States versus Steve Emery. All are convicted. Okay, and this goes into, like, he was actually involved in the offshore banking fraud. This guy was really a piece of shit his entire life, but he was paired up with the federal government, so he was allowed to be. 1996, Gordon Todd Skinner acquires a decommissioned former Atlas E missile base in Wamego, Kansas from Richard Dawson of Wichita, Kansas for $40,000 down, paid by Skinner in traveler's checks. And that was the missile silo where the LSD Palace was later created. MekoHaze, an associate of Skinner since 1990, introduces Gideon to Skinner. Skinner hires Gideon as caretaker of missile base. Divorced. Skinner is subject of Kansas Attorney General subpoena to analyze his long-distance telephone calls at the missile base for narcotic activity. The information is concealed from defense and jury in 2003 Kansas LSD trial, with agents testifying there was no previous investigation of Skinner. However, after the trial, defense acquired a subpoena from the Kansas Attorney General's office for Skinner's phone records at the missile base. AG's subpoena for Skinner's calls at the missile base was denied as authentic and characterized by prosecutor AUSA Gregory Hugh as an alleged subpoena in his response to a motion in March 2005 before the 10th Circuit. In April 2005, Kansas Bureau of Investigation General Counsel admits KBI has the phone records but no other records on Todd Skinner, again suppressing all investigative records and affidavits of KBI agents arising from the subpoena for Skinner's phone records, in addition to the outcomes of the toll analysis. 1997, Skinner begins relationship with 17-year-old Kansas girl residing near missile base. And this guy, he was a little ahead of his league too, because now we got this fentanyl crisis. In 1997, Skinner provides an individual with a near-lethal overdose of fentanyl at the missile base. 25-year-old Iranian at missile base discloses that Skinner is under investigation by KBI. Skinner appears in Taos and Santa Fe and infiltrates ayahuasca ceremonies as a participant during a period in which the União de Vegetal, I'm probably butchering that, an established ayahuasca religious group is under investigation by New Mexico U.S. Attorney's Office. The Supreme Court later established the UDV as an authentic religious group in a seminal decision on religious freedom. 97, Skinner provides blotter LSD to babysitter who reports Skinner to Potawatomi County Sheriff's Office and provides sample. DA is notified by Potawatomi Detective Sean Rolfe. Agents at 2003 LSD trial testified no action was taken. The report was not credible, and Skinner was never under investigation prior to October 2000. So basically, Kansas helped cover for him as well once it came to the testimony because of that immunity and him testifying against Leonard in that LSD bust. Skinner appears again in San Francisco and overdoses on alleged 2CB, his 17-year-old Kansas girlfriend, then a freshman at UC Berkeley, and another couple at the Mandarin Oriental Hotel. All were hospitalized. 98, his stepfather passes away. 98, DA issues Natus number on Gunner Gideon, indicating Gideon, now the caretaker at Wamego, Kansas missile base, is the subject of a federal investigation. Now this, 1999. Skinner engages in manslaughter of Paul Hulbach at the missile base on this date, April 29th, 1999. Skinner stated to Potawatomi County Sheriff's Office detective that Hulbach overdosed on narcotics and was taken immediately to the adjacent Wamego, Kansas emergency facility. However, Gunner Gideon stated to DEA agents in 2001 that after Hulbach overdosed on drugs provided by Skinner, Skinner repeatedly injected Hulbach with unknown substances, loaded the unconscious Hulbach into a van with Gideon and others, and drove 30 miles to a hospital, then refused to enter the hospital, finally returning to the missile base and unloading and still unconscious Hulbach. After many hours of repeated injections of unknown substances into the unconscious Hulbach by Skinner, Hulbach was then taken to the nearby emergency setting in Wamego, 5 minutes from the missile base. which that's where he was pronounced dead. Skinner, Gunnan, and Hobbs, on Skinner's instructions, stated to police in 1999 that Holbeck was brought in immediately. In 2001, Gunnar Guinean first reported to DEA the actual occurrences. Skinner was charged with manslaughter of Paul Holbeck. Then the charges were dismissed after Skinner claimed immunity in the 2000 LSD case in Kansas and asserted Guinan's statement was a product of Skinner's immunity, i.e., Skinner first brought Guinan to the attention of DEA, but see earlier Natus report on Guinan, indicating DEA already had knowledge of Guinan. Note date of Guinan's Natus report coincides with the death of Paul Holbeck in state of Kansas versus Skinner. DEA agents testified that there was no knowledge of Guinan prior to November 1999, conflicting with Guinan's Natus dated April 1999. So it looks like, I mean, I don't even know. The state of Kansas was all over the fucking place on this. But it appears they helped fuck up the homicide conviction because they were more worried about this LSD bust, which oddly enough, the claim is that he was injecting him with all these random things and they weren't sure what he was injecting this guy with, only for him to now be in prison from 2003, kidnapping Brandon Green and injecting him with a variety of unknown substances and almost killing him with the intent to kill him. That entire ordeal could have been completely avoided if there hadn't been, like, this is, and actually that's a good way of putting it there, Fox. This homicide, this Holbeck that won't ever get any justice, that was another side product of our failed war on drugs. So, and in all honesty, Skinner as a whole was a product of the failed war on drugs. They basically gave this psychopath scumbag freedom to do whatever he wanted his entire life because he was helping rat out other people that were selling drugs. So, man, and see, this is all that I didn't know. All this other side shit that went on around this LSD bust. But it's dark. I mean, it's really dark. There was a hospital 5 minutes away. And instead, Skinner took it upon himself to inject this guy with whatever substances he was injecting him with. And then driving him 30 minutes to not even take him to the hospital, to take him back to the missile silo to continue injecting him with drugs, just for the state of Kansas to basically give him immunity over that because he helped bust this missile silo. So, and then I actually lying about when they found out about it as well. So, I mean, I don't even know. This whole situation is just way more screwed up than just a simple LSD bust. And it seems like the worst person out of the bunch was the one that was given this immunity and allowed to keep on doing shit like this. Kennedy, it was torture and it was thrills. Like in the situation with Brandon Green in 2003, where they kidnapped him for 6 days. That's you probably missed that part. Brandon Green had been sleeping with his wife. They were dating, and so they kidnapped him, tricked him to come to the hotel room in Oklahoma, and then kept him for 6 days and duct taped him, and that was when Skinner began injecting different drugs, mainly psychedelic drugs, through his penis and other areas of his body. punching and kicking him in the penis. At one point, wrapped a telephone cord around his penis and pulled it so hard that it popped cartilage. Picked him up by his genitals. So, yeah, I mean, this guy was a... I don't know. Skinner's a... He deserves to be in jail for the rest of his life. It's a good thing that he's in jail, because he 100% he needs to be in jail for the rest of his life, pretty much. And so far, from what I can see, it looks like all of his appeals aren't going anywhere. He does keep on trying to appeal, but it doesn't look like they're going to go anywhere. Through fraud, Skinner obtains, 1999, through fraud, Skinner obtains an $80,000 check from an individual in Southern California, purchases a C4 Porsche Boxster. Skinner attempts to cover the fraud by repaying the individual with a counterfeit check. The individual deposits the check at the Bank of America, and Skinner refuses to return the stolen funds. The Porsche's title is placed under the spurious Wamego Land Trust that Skinner utilizes to conceal his ownership of vehicles and other properties. 2000, Skinner is arrested at the missile base for impersonating a treasury agent at Harrah's Mayetta, Kansas casino. Indicted in April. In August 2000, Skinner launders $867,000 at Bellagio and Paris casinos in Las Vegas with Catherine McGrinney, his mom, Gunnar Guinean, and others. Disposition of funds remains unknown. So it sounds like they got that $900,000, and then they're still not sure where that $900,000 went. Then 2000, that's when he met 18-year-old Crystal Cole at the Cabaret Club in Kansas and gives her MDMA at the missile base. Another currency transaction report filed on Skinner at the Bellagio in 2000. DA report about Operation Flashback regarding LSD lab in missile silo. May 14th through 16th, Paris Casino Director of Cage Operations Dave Ellis files suspicious activity report on Gunnar Guinean. May 16th, 2000, Paris Casino Director of Cage Operations Dave Ellis circulates a memorandum to all Cage employees stating that Gordon Todd Skinner, Catherine McGrinney, and others are suspected of being gaming agents, conducting unusual transactions and advising employees to watch them carefully. Family disturbance occurs at the home. Calling police with suspected 300 pills of MDMA delivered in a package from Amsterdam to Ryan Overton. DEA opens Natus file on Ryan Overton. Dave Ellis, Paris Casino Director of Cage Operations, writes in Cage Journal, heats off Skinner, let him do what he wants, anything he wants. Skinner invites his attorney, Thomas Haney, to Las Vegas, where Haney, according to Skinner, brought back one of Skinner's gambling markers for $60,000 at the Paris Casino. Skinner provides Leonard with power of attorney over the missile base, reportedly so that Leonard could ensure sale of missile base and funds for Skinner's children in the event of Skinner's death. Skinner encourages Leonard to use Skinner's credit card for booking air flights. Crystal Cole meets Ryan Overton at Brave. Many calls are placed from Overton's phone to missile base, where Ryan socialized with Crystal Cole, Overton, Guinean, and others at base. July 20th, 2000, Skinner moves stolen LSD lab to missile base with Guinean and Skinner's father. Skinner locates impure byproducts and liquids and begins to test for LSD activity by giving samples to Cole, Overton, Guinean, and others at the base, claiming the degraded product is ALD52. James Cromwell arrested in Topeka for possession of several grams of LSD, which Cromwell identified as LSD to arresting officer. Topeka newspaper reports Shawnee County Police Department officials stating, we don't see quantity of LSD around here. 8 months later, the charges on Cromwell are changed to possession of methamphetamine. Cromwell is sentenced to probation. On July 25th, that's when he called the DEA and began ratting out Leonard and everything. Let's see. Crystal Cole's father unwittingly delivers 300 doses of possible MDMA from Kansoulis's second mailing and meets with Crystal Cole, Ryan Overton, and Gunnar Gennon. MDMA is discarded. Ryan Overton put Crystal Cole and Shanna Evart in the Hold'em Fairfront Hotel and goes to Hurricane Club, where bouncers tell Ryan that DEA agents came to the club looking for Ryan. August 2000, Skinner absconds with stereo equipment valued at $150,000 that were on consignment to Skinner from Audio FX of Sacramento, California. Skinner withdraws $70,000 from Paris Casino in Las Vegas. Sentence for impersonating. Like, it just fucking goes on and on with this guy. Testified in 2003. First preliminary immunity granted by DOJ in October 12th, 2000, which, again, that's the one that covered the Holbeck murder. According to Skinner's testimony at 2003 LSD trial, DEA agents encouraged Skinner to enter Missile Base unaccompanied for several days during these dates and set out chemicals to be in plain view for agents, eventual walkthroughs that warrants can be obtained later for the district court judge. Covert entry warrant served at base. Defendants, blah, blah, blah. Let's see. Skinner lives in Tucson House with other government witnesses and river of MDMA and other drugs. Skinner during this time conceals at another location in Kansas twice the quantity of LSD precursor stolen by Skinner with the lab, as was seized at the missile base in November 6, 2000. Skinner prevaricates about the concealed LSD precursor for months, then finally provides most, but not all, of the LSD precursor to federal agents in Oakland, California on January 22, 2001. So not only did he rat everybody out, and the government gave him protection for ratting everybody out, he also stole a large amount of the product from the LSD lab before ratting them out. So this guy's just a fucking sack of shit all around. CI states Ryan Overton's MDMA supplier was Tennessee Kinkoulis. Kinkoulis arrested in Tulsa, Oklahoma, and transferred to Poland for trial on charges there. Skinner fails DEA polygraph about possession of additional chemicals. Skinner then provides another kilogram of LSD precursor and divulges location of unseized DMT equipment at Missile Base. Skinner and Crystal Cole in 2001. Skinner and Crystal Cole leave Tucson due to MDMA arrest of Skinner's distributor, Shauna Cox, by Tucson Mantis Task Force after Mantis agents stop car driven by Shanna Cox and Crystal Cole. Cole is not arrested. Skinner's 19-year-old wife begins annulment proceedings. Which, that's real weird how she keeps on getting out of shit, too. Skinner moves from Tucson to Seattle with Crystal Cole and remains in Seattle until his arrest for the theft of $150,000 stereo equipment. 2001, Todd Skinner is arrested in the state of Kansas for warrant for the manslaughter of Paul Holbeck in April 1999 at the missile base. Skinner claims indigence and is released on his own recognizance. Which, remind you, the homicide he was arrested for, that was at the missile base, the one where he was injecting the guy after he overdosed, and they just kept him at the missile base and started injecting him with unknown chemicals. Motion. Okay, so this is the brief of the Holbeck murder. Motion hearing in state of Kansas versus Gordon Todd Skinner concerning the manslaughter of Paul Holbeck. by Skinner at the missile base in April 1999. The Kansas DEA agent in the LSD case, Roger Hanslick, was questioned by State Prosecutor Barry Wilkerson about DEA agents knowing or knowledge of Gunnar Ginnin at the missile base in 1999 relative to the Holbeck manslaughter, and the subsequent interview by Ginnin by DEA in February 2001 in Tucson. Hanslick denied any knowledge by DEA of Ginnin prior to November 6, 2000, and this testimony conflicts with DEA investigation and opening of Ginnin's Natus file in April 1999, see above. DEA's lack of knowledge on Ginnin provided a legal basis for dismissal of manslaughter charges against Skinner. And so again, that's a DEA lying about when they opened this Natus file, which actually gave Skinner the ability to do this immunity to this fucking homicide. Like, fuck. And I imagine because of how it is, they call it manslaughter, but I mean, fuck, dude, that was murder. That was murder. Dude was overdosing, and they kept him at the missile base and just started injecting him with other God knows what drugs. After several hearings, Skinner's manslaughter charges are dismissed due to Skinner's immunity in the LSD case. However, Skinner's attorney, Thomas Haney, and DEA agents do not disclose to the state court a November 2, 2000 letter from DOJ to Haney stating that Skinner did not have immunity for acts of violence. The DOJ statement is not provided to the state of Kansas Judge Stephen Roth. After dismissal of this case involving repeated injections of unknown substances by Skinner into unconscious Paul Holbeck, Skinner in 2003 similarly injects large quantities of unknown substances into another victim, 18-year-old Brandon Green, after kidnapping, binding, and torturing Green for 6 days. See below. That's just super fucked up. It's such an odd story. Like, this is something that Netflix should probably pick up at some point in time. They need to, like, there should be a longer thing on this whole fucking situation. Civil damages, $150,000, are awarded by a Kansas state court to Audio FX due to default by Skinner and not responding to suit over Skinner theft of stereo of same value. Ken Kulis, incarcerated in Poland. Ryan Overton, arrested for 600 doses of MDMA. Skinner's attorney, Thomas Haney, sues Skinner for $175,000 in overdue legal fees and $200,000 in damages from Haney's injury at the missile base in July 2000. Full damages awarded. Haney joins other civil litigants with damages against Skinner totaling $750,000, all uncollectible from Skinner. 2002, Skinner rents a series of penthouses at the Metropolitan Towers in Seattle for $5,000 each per month. While residing in Seattle penthouses with Crystal Cole, Skinner impersonates Gordon Skinner, a British physician of a similar name who does AIDS research. Skinner signs lease using his father's identity and reference, Gordon H. Skinner, a Tulsa chiropractor. Skinner also describes himself to other neighbors as a chess master and military general. Skinner's several neighbors, alarmed at Skinner's bizarre behavior, do internet searches of Dr. Gordon Skinner and discover an online plea by Leonard and the defense team for information as to Skinner's whereabouts. Skinner's address was sought in order to subpoena him for the 2003 Kansas LSD trial in the event the government chose not to produce him. Multiple neighbors described his activities. Upon request, neighbors provided a photograph of Skinner taken by one neighbor in an elevator of the Metropolitan Towers, thus confirming Skinner's presence. In 2002, Skinner reported to Sergeant Freeze of the Seattle Police Department by a irate parent for supplying drugs to his teenage son. During the Skinner Seattle period at the Metropolitan Tower, Skinner is dealing 4,000 hits of MDMA per week, according to Crystal Cole in her DEA interview of July 2003, wherein Cole named Skinner's Seattle distributors. Which, that's a pretty big one there. 2002, August, Gordon Todd Skinner impersonates a physician in Seattle courtroom in an MDMA case. Video Seattle proceeding not permitted to be shown to jury in 2003 LSD trial. State of Washington Pharmaceutical Control Board issues order to Skinner to cease prescribing medications. Order includes name of about 20 young people. Skinner signs lease for 58th floor penthouse at Cityplex Towers in Tulsa for $4,500 per month using the name Todd Ross Skinner. Skinner's father, then 65, is arrested at 4:30 a.m. after he refuses entrance. 12:30 a.m. to Tulsa police, who are investigating a report of domestic abuse. Tulsa Special Operations Team communicates with Elder Skinner until 4:15 a.m. when Skinner and Carla Castellano emerge from the house. Gordon Todd Skinner testifies for 11 days as the government's principal witness in Kansas LSD trial. Agents state there was no investigation of Skinner prior to October 2000, but see Kansas Attorney General's investigation of Skinner in 1997. Skinner's extensive history as an informant is also suppressed. Ryan Overton, while incarcerated, and Shayna Everhart offer to testify against Skinner, but are denied immunity by the prosecutor Gregor Hugh. Crystal Cole is subpoenaed by the defense, but asserts on Skinner's advice her Fifth Amendment privilege. A request for immunity for Cole is denied by the prosecutor, who described Cole as not credible, but see Cole's use as a credible government witness in State v. Skinner, 2003. All are prohibited from testifying for the defense. Lavoy McKinley, against whom Skinner testified in 1993, is released from prison. In May 2003, Skinner overdoses several teenagers in Tulsa, Oklahoma, while providing them free drugs in his hotel suites. Crystal Cole, now 20 years old, begins relationship with 18-year-old Brandon Green. In June, Brandon arrested for drugs in Lebanon, Missouri, and offers information on Skinner. June, Crystal Cole and Brandon Green filed complaints against Skinner in state court for violence, each requesting a separate protective order against Skinner. In her complaint, Cole states that Skinner previously had dislocated her jaw, grabbed her by the neck, and thrown her to the ground, attempted to smother her, stalked her, and threatened to kill her and others. Cole indicated that she had separated from Skinner since February-March 2003. The period of alleged separation is during the 2003 Kansas LSD trial. Cole also testified at State v. Skinner in 2006 that she daily reviewed court transcripts of testimony in the 2003 LSD trial provided by DEA agent Carl Nichols while residing with Skinner during trial. Crystal Cole and Brandon Green report Skinner to Kansas City DEA office. Agent Roger Hanslick in Tulsa DEA office. Agents Douglas Kidwell and Dwayne Barnett. Cole also states Skinner had an MDMA laboratory in Building 3 of Skinner's mother's small business, Gardner Springs Incorporated. Green stated he distributed drugs for Skinner. Skinner overdoses teenager Chris Wright of the AmeriSuites Hotel in Tulsa. Wright is admitted to St. Joseph Hospital emergency room. It's like he's in like double digits of overdosing teenagers at this point, like in that 1 year. July 4th, 2003, Skinner kidnapped, binds, gags, assaults, and tortures 18-year-old Brandon Green over a 6-day period in Tulsa, Oklahoma, and Houston, Texas, assisted by Crystal Cole and Willem Huck. Green is repeatedly injected by Skinner with unknown substances. Compare manslaughter of Paul Holbeck above. Skinner had met with Hawk while both were incarcerated in New Jersey jail in 1988, with Hawk convicted on charges of sex with a minor. Which, yeah, that is the thing. Hawk, that was the one that like took and dropped off Brandon Green after they kept him hostage for 6 days. That's why he was in jail before that, was sex with a minor. Email sent from Tulsa, AUSA, Litchfield to Topeka, AUSA, Hugh, stating Skinner popped up for a DA interview and, frankly, he sounds a little spooky. July 10th, Skinner, Cole, and Hawk blindfolded and gagged the bound Brandon Green, injects him with drugs, and move him in a box of luggage carried to the Doubletree Suite in the trunk of the car, then transport him to a hotel in Houston, Texas, where the torture of Green continued. So while they had Brandon Green kidnapped and were injecting God knows what into him and beating his genitals and all the other weird shit they were doing. Skinner actually reached out to the DEA again. Was that the DEA? Yeah. For a DEA interview in 2003, like in the middle of torturing an 18-year-old, he reached out to them. And that's when they said that he sounded a little spooky. DEA interview Mandy Ray, who provides sample of Skinner's drugs she had acquired from Christy Roberts. DEA interview of Laura Bell and Dina Dobbs, who brought in Christy Roberts to DEA. Roberts was disorientated from Skinner's drug overdose in this interview. Ball and Dobbs discussed Skinner's drug distribution to young people and the need for his arrest. Hawk is instructed to dump Brandon Green's body. DEA interview Christy Roberts concerning Skinner's kidnapping of Brandon. Let's see. Skinner is arrested for 352 grams of MDMA at the Burning Man Festival in Reno, Nevada, and booked in Pershing County Sheriff's Office August 30th, 2003. September 3rd, 2003, Skinner is indicted in Tulsa for kidnapping and torture of teenager Brandon Green. September 2003, Leonard's attorney Billy Rourke contacts Wamego Telephone Company concerning possible electronic surveillance and missile base without court order, leading to the phone company's production of a 1997 Kansas Attorney General subpoena for Skinner's phone records at the missile base involving a narcotics investigation of Skinner, previously unknown to the district court, jury, or defense in Leonard's trial. I should maybe try and reach out to Leonard's attorney as well. I wonder. September 2004, Skinner returned to Tulsa and arraigned for kidnapping. 2004, Skinner asserts immunity defense as he did with manslaughter charges in Kansas for death of Paul Holbeck at the missile base. Skinner's preliminary hearing for the kidnapping and torture of Brandon Green. One journalist characterizes the disclosures at the hearing as suggesting an even darker picture of the kidnapping. February 2005, Crystal Cole contacts Leonard's attorney, Billy Rourke, and states she has an offer from the government to testify against Skinner in exchange for no incarceration for participating in the kidnapping and torture of Brandon Green. March 28, 2005, affidavit received from Crystal Cole stating that Leonard was innocent and was set up by Skinner. 2005, defense discovery of unredacted NATIS numbers on a DEA interview of Crystal Cole, leading to the first knowledge by defense of DEA investigation in 1999 concerning missile-based caretaker Gunnar Ginnan. Let's see. An unsolicited partial copy of Skinner's pre-trial motion of April 1st, 2005, received by the defense from an unknown individual. The motion details many suppressed interviews with witnesses against Skinner, see witnesses Stetler, Wright, Dobbs, Ball, and Roberts above, and confirms his informant activity in the federal cases against Ryan Overton and Tennessee Kinkulis, also suppressed by the government at the Kansas LSD trial. Full copy of motion is requested and received from Skinner's attorney, Kevin Adams. Skinner's motion asserting immunity is denied. Supplemental motion revealed that Skinner's recorded federal agents' phone calls prior to July 2003 interview. Received review of Crystal Cole's interview with Tripsine.com in which she stated Skinner was overdosing people at Burning Man with LSD. Pre-sentence investigation report. Crystal Cole is filed in Tulsa District Court. Click here to read report on Cole prior to her sentencing. With the report, kidnapping and torture victim Brandon Green states that after kidnapping by Skinner and Crystal Cole, he was injected with unknown chemicals and drugs in his penis, testicles, back, arms, and legs, hit in the groin repeatedly, kicked in the groin until he blacked out, forced to drink an unknown substance, and was also forced to swallow some form of parasitic eggs, not given any food and very little fluids during his captivity, bound with duct tape by the hands and feet and beaten repeatedly, duct taped across the mouth to prevent his calls for help, tied around the testicles and or penis with a telephone cord and suspended from a bed, pulled with the telephone cord around his penis until cartilage popped, subjected to a deep cut into his penis with a knife or razor blade, subjected to bleach being poured over his groin area, brutally shaved by Crystal Cole of his scalp, eyebrows, genitalia, and his entire body, subjected to severe trauma to the rectum with an unknown instrument. Crystal Cole's pre-sentence investigation report also cites torture victim Brandon Green as reporting a collapsed lung due to damage to the left side of his body, sexual dysfunction, severe memory loss. I was kidnapped in July 2003, and today in almost February 2007, almost 4 years have gone by, and I'm still in constant agony in multiple areas across my body. It kills me to think that Crystal could be released from probation in half the amount of time that I have been suffering. I beg the courts to be harsh on Crystal and charge her with the maximum penalty available. Crystal A. Cole Skinner handed me over to complete evil. Crystal A. Cole Skinner encouraged and enjoyed the physical, sexual, and emotional torture inflicted against my will for numerous days. Crystal is very sick and very young. She has a propensity to kill and is arrogant enough to follow through with it. Her only regret is getting caught, and probably wishes she had finished me off there in the field. Question from pretrial investigator. Do you believe the defendant is a serious threat to the community? Answer. Yes, very much so. She is young, evil, and enthusiastic. She still has a lot of damage she could do, if not punished correctly the first time. Just as her predecessor husband, each time she slides through the court system successfully, she will become more brazen and confident. Question from pretrial investigator. What type of punishment, in your opinion, do you feel is necessary for the defendant to receive? Incarceration. People are creatures of habit. I would bet the farm she is currently living off illegally made money and is either committing or scheming several large crimes. She has grown up in a life of easy money, answering to no one, and is lying to everyone. I would be too scared not to incarcerate Crystal A. Cole Skinner. For somebody to commit the types of crimes she has committed and to show no real signs of emotion, she is a loose cannon and is a threat to any community, especially a threat to unsuspecting males. Additional comments by torture victim Brandon Green in pretrial investigation report on Crystal Cole. She was the first and only girlfriend I took home to my parents. I trusted Crystal with everything. I had a boyish optimism about life. I was quick-witted and mentally sharp, and above all else, I had no idea such evil, like Crystal, even existed. In contrast with the way I feel Crystal was portrayed throughout the court process, I want the court to know that Crystal was a strong-willed, intelligent woman with full control of her emotions and psychological abilities. She is the definition of wicked and manipulative. Unfortunately for society, Crystal has the capability to play or maneuver a person or situation just as someone would engage in chess. One person Crystal played was Gordon Todd Skinner. She always had the upper hand in the relationship. Crystal was not controlled or kidnapped by Skinner. Many nights Crystal would sit in front of the mirror and would repeat to herself what she would say if ever caught for her and Skinner's illicit drug activity. Months after my body was discovered in Texas and the three were identified and located, the first assistant DA on the case had me come into his office to discuss the court case. When Crystal's pre-memorized story about her involvement with Skinner was regurgitated by attorney David Robertson, my stomach dropped and I felt faint. She was just a girl who got caught up in Skinner's manipulation and mind control. Italicized in the original. Crystal Cole's pre-sentence investigation report also cites statements of torture victim Brandon Green regarding Crystal Cole's activities prior to and after the kidnapping. After my body was dumped, Skinner and Cole returned home and proceeded to contact several of my former friends and associates. She would ask them if they had heard from Brandon. In my humble opinion, Crystal's involvement was greatly played down throughout the court proceedings. The moment I heard my attorney, Mr. Robertson, express to me his feelings in regards to Crystal, and it was verbatim the phrase Crystal would always practice in front of the mirror, I realized at that point Crystal's true side would never be brought out in court. To think that my high school felony drug charge for an unprescribed pain medication carried a worse penalty than Crystal's charge makes me cringe. She always said the two worst things that can happen to her are spending time in jail and or gain a felony conviction. I pray earnestly that she gets both. Here are a few things probably never mentioned about Crystal's premeditation and the execution of the plans in regards to my kidnapping. Although she was broke, had no steady income, and had previously helped me financially, Crystal secretly paid my apartment's rent several months ahead. She had told the landlord that her and I were about to go to California to take care of her dying father. I found this information out after the fact, and it still took me several years to realize she paid up my apartment so nobody would be looking for my body. 2 weeks prior to my kidnapping, Crystal had spent a lot of time and energy in the search for an anointed person to create her a pure white robe that was designated for a special occasion. In a sick twist of humor, Crystal wore the same prayer robe I helped design to perform seances over my body while I was being tortured. She would chant prayers over my body, offering up my soul as a sacrifice to Satan. So again, that's, yeah, I want to see if I can get Crystal to come on live. So we'll see. Again, I'm Facebook friends with her on my main account, so we'll see. We'll definitely see. You know, I don't know if a lot of this is like a Crystal Cole timeline. I feel like maybe at this point we're probably at a pretty good like introduction to this whole situation if I can get these get some of these people to come on live, because again I also want to try and get Leonard to come on live as well, which Leonard was released in July of this year. So man, I'm telling you, that situation is a thing. Jesus Christ. So, what time are we at? 10:57. I think I'm going to take a short break for a minute. And then probably, I wonder which order. Like I said, I wanted to go ahead and get these other two lives out of the way, just because obviously with Kirk Pendergrass, we just want to break him as a human at this point and get him to stop scamming people. And then Shar and Arlena Wiles, we're basically keeping track of Arlena breaking these court orders. So I don't know. I don't think either video we're going to watch all the way. So I think maybe in like 10 or 15 minutes, maybe. Let's maybe do Arlena and get Arlena out of the way. Or fuck, I don't know. Maybe we'll do Kirk. I don't know. What do you got? Is anybody watching that actually follows my Sovereign Kiddos? And if so, what do you want? Do you think Kirk or do you think Arlena? Like, which one do you want to do first? Do you want to see Arlena talking with Shara, or do you want to see Kirk telling us about how we're going back to 1776? I think it is. We got to vote for Arlena, which Arlena I think would be most possibly the shorter one. One Arlena, one Kirk. We got two. God damn, we got two Arlenas, two Kirks. Fox has a good point. Get Arlena's before she deletes the video. Oh no, Jolly. I'm glad you enjoyed it. That one is a little bit different than things we've done on this channel in the past. But like I said last night, I was just looking into this, I was just looking into these court records randomly. Me and my roommate were, and I started finding these other parts of it. And me and her were both just like, what the fuck is this? Like, I didn't know about a lot of the darker side of this situation. And then one of the big reasons why I wanted to was even just start getting this together is getting some of these people on for future lives. And then also, I really don't like that whole Paul Holbeck death. And with Kansas basically protecting Skinner over that death. So, I mean, that family got no justice for that. That's disgusting. Arlene and Shore sounds like they go together with Kirk. Well, and see, that's the thing. Like, just search engine wise and like searching for the videos, I want to keep them separate. That's why I'm going to do them one at a time. I don't think either video we're going to watch all of them because there's already like, we already know both of them are full of shit. But I just want to keep track of what both of them are doing. Arlena, especially with court coming up. That one, we'll probably do Arlena, because I feel like Arlena and Shara we can skip through a little bit more. Kirk we want to listen to and make fun of a little bit more. Kirk we're actively trying to discredit so people understand that he's a con man. Arlena's already screwed. Arlena's going to court, so maybe let's do that. In like probably 15-ish minutes, we'll pop back up and we'll just go ahead and get Shara and Arlena knocked out of the way. And then we'll get that down. And then we'll do Kirk. Kirk's more of a late night anyways. We can all sit around, we can laugh and make fun of Kirk. So yeah. I believe I was sent Dick Finger's phone number, actually. Arlena's court date. Shit, I knew that. I think it's 2021 now. I think like January 2021. I know her court was one of the ones that got pushed back. I think that, if I remember correctly, I don't think it was just COVID that got it pushed back. But I think Arlena's court is January 2021. Don't quote me on that because there's a few cases at the moment of like similar stuff that I'm kind of paying attention to, even on the down low. So I could be confusing those because there's multiple of these people. Obviously, as most of you know, if anybody's been following that whole Sovereign saga. Chloe, January 15th. See, okay, I thought it was January 2, so I think we're on the same page there. I do believe that her trial starts in January. So it shouldn't be long. But again, she's already on court order to not be doing what she's doing right now. So I don't know. Hopefully one of these lives or something, they'll, it's whatever. She's not supposed to be doing it, though. I mean, she's been specifically ordered because you're talking about an underage autistic victim to stay offline and stop talking about it. But for some reason, Shara, the like sovereign child abusing defending journalist, thinks it's a good idea to keep on bringing them on. So okay, let's do that. Thank you guys for watching this darker one, this weirder one, because like I said, we're also going to start expanding out to other stuff. And normally it'll be more relevant, but like right now the world's just such a mess. That's just such a weird story. I went ahead and pulled that one back, even though it's old back from 2000. I do think there is still some current things like Leonard getting out this July. The fact that there is that unanswered murder charge involved, well, manslaughter, that situation, I felt like it was just kind of a good break from everything. So like 15-ish minutes, I will see you guys again, and we will watch what Arlena had to lie about this time. So Dude, Nick, I'm right there with you. When I'm out of Facebook jail, that's when I'm going to reach out to Crystal, and I already sent off that email to Leonard. So we'll see. We'll see how it goes. We'll see if she agrees. Maybe she will, maybe she won't. I don't know. But I also don't like Vice's portrayal and how it kind of built her up in the psychedelic community. I think there's a bit more questions are warranted than just looking at her as some sort of LSD princess. So I will see you guys very shortly, and we'll listen to all the bullshit that Arlena has to say, which should be fun.